Hi everyone. For today's video of script tips, I want to do things a little bit differently here. Not quite as scripted. I want to go a little bit more off the cuff. Today's video is going to be about lighting, specifically how to light your auditions. I'm going to go over some of the different basic ways to light your space, the do's and don'ts of it, some unique ways that you can light your space if you've got like a specific character or tone of a show that you want to do. And then at the end, I'm also going to show you guys my lighting setup, how I light my auditions and tape my auditions. And then I'm also going to tell you guys where you can get all of the stuff that I have. All right, cool. Thank you all for tuning in. Before we begin, could I just ask you guys, hit that like and subscribe button for me. It really helps me out, and hopefully the information that I'm giving you guys in this video will help you out as well. So a little mutual helping each other out kind of thing going on here. Lighting is such an important part to any audition. I mean, if we can't see you or see you clearly, then how are we going to be affected by your performance, right? I mean, I'm sure besides just being able to see you, it's important for setting like a tone and a style, right? I mean, think back to some of your favorite movies, start paying attention to like the lighting. I mean, it really is an amazing art form. The more and more I look for it, the more and more I appreciate it. And almost any audition you're going to get from a casting director, in their instructions, one of the top things they're going to say is make sure that it is lit well. That means they want to be able to see you clearly. So some of the basic do's and don'ts when it comes to lighting. First of all, I'll go over the do's just because I want you guys to understand the basic concept here of what good lighting is, right? Because that's kind of subjective, right? Like, what is good lighting? The purpose of lighting specifically for self-tapes or auditions is for them to be able, the casting directors to be able to see your face. Specifically your eyes. You know, the idea here is they want to be able to see that things are going on up here, and the only way that they're going to be able to do that is through here. So the fact that, or the way that you want that to happen is to make sure that you have clear lighting on your eyes. Going from that, I'll kind of go to the first don't. You want to be very careful not to have a strong, like, overhead light. The reason for that is a top-down light like that is going to create a lot of shadow from your brows right here, right in your eyes, right where casting is going to want to see you. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't have a hair light of some kind, but I think it gets tricky if you're doing something overhead. I prefer something from the side, some kind of light coming from the side if you're going to try to highlight your hair or accent yourself a little bit. Some other basic do's. You really want lighting of the same color. You don't want to be mixing like your whites and your yellows, stuff like that. You want it to be even, so not like too much light coming from one source and not enough from another. You want it to be pretty even across your face as well. There are exceptions to that. I'll get to that later. Getting into the don'ts, besides the one I already mentioned about the overhead light, same goes for underneath light, right? You're going to look like Boris Karloff. Ooh, that's a dated reference. You're going to look like the Are You Afraid of the Dark kids, right? Like anytime you light the flashlight underneath you and good evening, right? Like, so you want to try to avoid that type of lighting that's going to create shadow the other way, right? Where above your cheeks, you're getting shadow and stuff. So directional light in general, you want to kind of avoid, but especially top or down, it's really going to change how you look, and it's going to shadow the most important part of your face. So I guess this is kind of a mix of a do/don't. I feel like I kind of already said it in the do. You want to make sure you have clean, even light on your face. So the don't is basically the reversal of that. Don't have a light source directly behind you shining out. So this goes into you don't really have to have a professional setup if you have a good source of natural light coming into you. But one thing you especially don't want to do is have light behind you, right? Anybody who's ever taken a photograph where like the sun's behind them, right? It silhouettes you. So that's something you want to avoid. Another don't is you want to control the temperature of the light on you. If it's too hot, is a term that's used. It basically means the light is really close to you. It's kind of potentially like washing you out. For example, the light right now is a little too hot on me. It's just a little too close, and it's washing me out completely. Right, like you can't see any details on my face, my eyes, anything. I'm a little washed right now. So if you have the space, you want to be able to move those lights back. If you don't have the space, ideally you have lights that have some type of dimming control on them, where you can adjust those levels. If not, another option is diffusing them. You can use some things like parchment paper or like professional diffusing material if you have it. But something like that to try to lower that light. You could also get lower wattage light bulbs to lessen the light that's coming out of those as well, to kind of lessen that temperature on your face. Another tip, if your lights are too hot on you like that, is you can, if you're using a DSLR camera or any other kind of camera besides your phone, it should have like ISO controls, things like that, where you're going to be able to adjust how much light the lens is taking into the camera. So that's something that you can do as well to kind of tweak to get the right temperature and light on your face for your skin tone. So I touched on this a second ago, but I'll talk about it a little bit more. Some alternatives if you don't want to have a professional setup. Maybe you don't have the space, maybe you don't have the money. A cheaper way you can kind of utilize this at home is you can use the lamps. What you want to be careful with is you want to make sure, again, that you don't have mixed light. You don't want yellow light and white light mixing together. It's going to look odd. And for the sake of clean light on your skin, you should avoid yellow light in general. It'd be better if they're white. Now, if you don't have any current white light sources like that, I mean, you can just go to a home improvement store or wherever and just get some white light bulbs. But also, as I said earlier, maybe you have a great open, like multiple window space where like you get some really great natural light coming in. That's going to work as well. Again, you just want to make sure that you are facing that source of light rather than having it behind you, because that's going to silhouette you, or if it's coming too strongly from the side, right, that's going to create a lot of shadow as well over the bridge of your nose. So just make sure that you've got that good light source coming in. The issue or the problem with that is, what if it's a cloudy day or a rainy day? What if it's what if you're getting clouds and then sun, right? So the light is constantly changing. What if you're trying to record at sunset or dusk or in the later afternoon when the sunlight is constantly changing its angle, and also it's getting like more orangish and yellowish rather than a nice clean white. And that's another thing too. You should avoid direct sunlight. Obviously, you want indirect sunlight. Another way a lot of people like to light themselves is with a ring light. Those are very popular, especially for like YouTube videos and things like that. I would highly recommend for your auditions that you avoid the ring light. You can see the ring light in the iris of your eye. And again, the purpose of lighting yourself for self-tape auditions is so that casting and producers can see your eyes. And if it's being filled with a ring light, that's going to detract or distract from your performance. So you want to try to avoid those if you can. Instead, I would highly recommend for any kind of a basic setup that's going to give you the lighting that you need are ideally 2 soft boxes. Soft boxes are big square or circular lights. A lot of photographers will use them, and you can get them on Amazon and a bunch of different places. I highly recommend 2 box lights. The basic concept here is one will be what's called your key light. That's your main source of light on you. That's what's kind of like filling the space. And then ironically, your other light will be your fill light. That's filling in any of the potential shadows or darkened spaces as a result of your key light. So ideally you want those in either corner or either side of where you are currently standing, lighting your area and then filling the space. And that's going to give you the best basic lighting that you will need to put together good work. Now, if you want to get a little bit fancier or upgrade a little bit, another lighting setup that I can highly recommend on top of your two softboxes as your key and your fill light is a backdrop light. So the backdrop light I have right back here. So I prefer to have mine adjustable because I'm constantly doing different framed shots, whether it's commercial or full body slates, etc. By the way, if you're curious about framing and the different kinds of framing that you can have for auditions, please go check out my other video on framing, where you guys will see exactly how you should be framing your self-tape auditions. But back to this, the backlight is really great because without it, I'm going to turn it off for a sec here. Without your backlight, you kind of start to blend into the wall behind you here. You kind of flatten against it. Now with that light, it creates this great separation. You get a little bit of kind of like a halo around your shoulders. Your backdrop is now going to be like a different color. It gives it some texture, and it really helps, like I said earlier, separate you from your backdrop and makes you pop. And then if you really want to get fancy, a little doohickey here called an accent light is another one I recommend. So I just got the same kind of light that I got for my backdrop light, but any kind of profiled light will work. The idea here is you line it up so that it's about even with the side of your face. This is going to, the reason it's called an accent light, this is going to help maybe counter some of the washing that might be happening from the white light on you, especially me, I'm very pale. When you get the accent light on you, it can help create some of the contours, or not create, but more bring them out. Like I said, allow you not to be flattened by your key and fill lights. It can also work as a bit of a hair light to create some texture there, right? I mentioned earlier how I wouldn't recommend an overhead hair light because of the potential to create shadow. This is going to just do that, perform that task for you. So yeah, I recommend ultimately for a pretty nice lighting setup, having your key light, the fill light, your backdrop light, and then your accent light. I think really brings it together nice. So that's all well and good if you've got your studio space or if you're at home, right? But what happens if you're on the road? How do you light something effectively when you're traveling? Well, this is where a ring light can come in handy. It's kind of the lesser of two evils. It will at least light you clean, and usually ring lights are compact enough that you can travel with them. Another thing that you can do, though, is just follow the same basic principle I said of the idea of a key and a fill light. It's obviously not going to be as good as your studio setup, but if you follow that basic concept, you'll at least light yourself evenly so that you're not creating any shadows that are going to inhibit your performance. So I've actually got these two little guys that I got off of Amazon that I just prop up on little mini tripods, and I can move them around my hotel space, and I'll light myself evenly from there with my key and my fill. They've come with a couple of different gels, but you don't really need them. Like I said, stick with white light. Another tip, if you're on the road and you don't have any equipment like that, once again, you can go back to natural light. You just want to avoid those overhead lights, follow the basic other rules I talked about, no overhead or under lights. Keep that lighting nice and even on you from, I would say, just above your head. Just slightly above your head at a downward angle towards you, but not a downward angle, right? Kind of just a slight angle above you. Tends to give you the best lighting. Now, if you've researched a show and you notice the tone is maybe darker, or maybe you're playing just a darker, grittier character, maybe a villain or a victim even, but it's just a little bit more serious of a tone, you can create a little bit of shadow for some affect here, but the idea is you still want to make sure your eyes can be seen. I'll show you guys an example of that real quick. So in a case like this, right, we can see the light is coming way more predominantly this side. Now I've used my accent light, I've actually moved it to the other side to kind of create or operate as a bit of a fill to make sure the shadows aren't too significant over some of my important parts here. But this is definitely like a lot more like dramatic and grittier of lighting. I don't recommend doing this for, like I said, any old audition. It would have to be a very specific part. But this is like an example of a way that you can kind of play around with the light to help kind of set a tone or a style or a mood a little bit better. Now, earlier I mentioned if you're using a camera and not just your phone, you have the option of adjusting your ISO. That will kind of help how much, like how dark or how light the image appears on your camera. Another thing that you can adjust as well is the white balance. If for some reason you're noticing maybe you're coming off a little like blue or a little orange or something like that, try white balancing. White balancing is a pretty simple process. Most cameras now, it's very easy. Back in my broadcasting days, it was a little bit more tedious of a process, but just focus in on any kind of white object. Basically, be a white piece of paper, whatever, and white balance against that in your lighting space as you have it lit. And that kind of sets it to a zero, and you're going to have lighting that is, or color that is accurate to you rather than, you know, a Smurf or something like that. So I also want to do a quick shout out to my buddy Kurt Yu, who has a really great YouTube channel that I've got linked here below. And he has a wonderful video about your lighting setup and how to light for auditions. He also has one on why not use, he also has one on why not to use a ring light in your self-tape auditions. I highly recommend all of you guys click the link and go watch his videos. All right, I've spoken to you guys about my lighting setup and how I'm going to show you guys it. You've already seen my backdrop and accent light. And I've told you guys the basic key concepts, but I'm going to move the camera around here a little bit so you guys can actually see it. Okay, here is the reverse view. You are currently where I usually stand. So these are your two box lights. These are going to be pointed at you. These are your key and fill light. And these are the main lights that you're going to want to use for your auditions. And now that we are zoomed out, you can see my accent light and my backdrop light here. So these are two of the same. I got like adjustable ones because sometimes I'm sitting down, sometimes I'm standing up. I want to be able to move these guys around. You can also change the color on these guys depending on if you want something to look a little different. But as I said, I always recommend you go with the clean white for your auditions. And then you can even adjust the intensity of these lights as well, based on your lighting needs. Play around with them at home if you've got something like this, and just do what works best for you. So I actually got all of this equipment on Amazon for a pretty affordable price as well. I highly recommend that's where you guys go to check these out. But again, you can get these from almost any photography place. If you're in the acting community, ask some of your acting friends where they got theirs, or if they are maybe selling some of their old ones. That's a good way to try to get stuff on the cheap as well. But if you are going to go for the ones that I have, there are links in the bottom of this video that will tell you where you can get these at. Okay? Any lighting tips I didn't mention? Tell me in the comments below. Also, tell me what your favorite movie quote is. Take care and best of luck with your auditions.